Aloha, I'm Desmond Hakias. Thank you for joining us with Healing with Aloha podcast, where we bring hope and healing with Aloha. It is such a pleasure of mine to have Keilani Milling on our show. We met in a group called Rush Wahine, which is based in Hawaii, and I wanted you guys to meet her. She does so much to help us to understand who we are and what we are. And before we go on, Keilani, would you like to share with them what you do?
Yes, yes. Hello, everybody. Aloha. It's so nice to meet everybody out there. I am an astrologer. I'm also a tarot reader and a self-care specialist. So I'm a person who helps people listen to themselves and
Sorry.
listen to their intuition. And no worries. Listen to themselves and help them listen to their intuition so that they can make choices in their life that they feel good about and that are empowering for them.
Thank you. Um, so
Yeah.
what is today is a special day, right? And you do astrology. Can you
Yes.
share with us what's so special about today?
Yeah, so today we have a full moon. We have a full moon in Aquarius. So, I mean, I feel like every day is a special day because the planets are constantly moving and we have different energies that are coming in and out. And my goal is always to share with people how to align themselves with the energies that are happening in the world. So that way you're not like fighting against it, you're like working with the energy. So that is like always how I like to encourage people to do. So today, we have a full moon in Aquarius. So full moons typically are a time where we release something, we let things go. The energy has been building up into this point. And Aquarius, the energy of Aquarius, and we also have the sun square Uranus, which is also ruled by Aquarius, and also the moon squared Uranus. So we have a lot of this energy that's shaking things up in terms of like where we want to go or how we do things. So basically there's been some things in our lives that we've been maybe a little bit stubborn about, or things that we haven't wanted to do, or things that or change that needed to happen that we've been a little stuck with. The full moon energy in Aquarius is encouraging us to kind of like jump out of that, and it might cause some things to happen in our lives that shake us up a bit and gets us back on track to where we should be going in our lives. And I think like as we work with all the energies, some of the energies are a lot soothing, some of them like feel really good and feel really yummy because we're also in Leo season right now. So that's the time to kind of sort of
That's
like
you.
smile. Yeah, that's me. I'm a Leo. And so that's like a smiling time and a time to be like creative and fun and like get in contact with like our inner child and things like that. But there's also times where we need a little bit more structure and we need a little bit more restriction, which is like kind of Saturn and what's been happening since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're always moving throughout, and the moon is always changing because it's the thing that's closest to our planet, and that's changing all the time. So we'll feel that, especially for people who, depending upon where their moon is, and if they have a moon in Aquarius, they're really going to be feeling that. So know that there's going to be some wobble the way that you've been doing things, or a structure that you've had up. You might have to attack it from a different way, or you might actually have some energy that comes in and that causes you to do things differently. And so you just have to kind of flow with that. And that's going to be the important thing, because if you fight against it, it can be a little rough.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so you just gotta go with the flow.
Yeah. I mean, there are
Because there's
times like,
blockage, like for many of us, I can
yeah,
personally speak. We have blockage. Like we
yeah,
know what we want to do, but we hold ourselves back, and so we kind of need that disruption to break out in a
yes,
good way.
absolutely.
It's not comfortable,
Absolutely.
but in the end, it's good. if we
Absolutely. And I
try
think
to see the good.
absolutely. And I think when we know that, when we've had enough of working with that energy in our lives, that we know that there's times where things are going to take a sudden shift, and we can actually look back. I think that's why it's really important to be able to look back in our lives and to journal, and the times where you've dealt with tough things, to even have maybe a separate journal of like things that I've overcome, so that when you're coming up against the next wall and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get over this or under this or through this, you can look back at the times, exactly at the times, and look at those entries and say, I don't know how I was going to get through this. And then you see at the last minute something, you got a help, or at the last minute you got a different idea of a way to go through it. And so it's really important to think about what's happened in the past and how you've overcome things, and then you're going to make sure that you continue to do that in the future.
So it's like a stepping stone. Like it's a reminder of the stepping stones that you have had breakthroughs in, uh, to
Mm-hmm.
lean back on. Cause like you know how like they say do like a gratitude journal or but then this is a different one. It's about
Oh yeah.
how you're going through a moment, and as you're
Yeah.
processing it, you're learning. Then it's something you can revert to when you're like, okay, here I am again. I'm in a new
Mm-hmm.
event, new lesson, new moment. Okay,
Yeah.
how did I, what did I do at that moment? And then maybe you can
Yeah.
apply, because your brain maybe is like, oh my gosh, right now I'm going through a traumatic time. But then at
Oh
least you have
yeah.
a reference point.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we're going through trauma and we're going through something difficult, it's really hard to have that clarity of mind because our emotions are welling up so high. We sometimes just can't see the way out. You know, you're so far in the pit. All you're seeing around you is just the hole and the distance from where you are and the place that you want to be. So if you can kind of track back and look at I felt this way before. This is something that's happened before in my life. It's also something that I've seen happening before in other people's lives. And I know that it's just that one step forward. And I think one time I was listening to Oprah talk about like accomplishments, or not so much of getting over hard things, but if you have a goal and it's like just this kind of really lofty goal that you want. And she said, one thing that you have to do is just take the next step. You don't have to think about, I mean, of course, there's going to be like a plan that you have to get you where you want, but all you really
Mm-hmm.
have to think about is taking the next logical step, you know? And if we do it where we're just taking step by step by step, you know, before we know it, we'll get to the end of it, you know? And it's not a race. I mean, people always think life is a race, and it doesn't have to be like in that sense, because a race means that there's winners and losers. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
ever think that. I think it's a journey. I think it's an excursion. I think it's a trip, you know? Like we're all going that way. I mean, you've been to Maui before. It's like the road to Hana. It's not like when you get to Hana, you're like, yeah, but it's actually like all the waterfalls. It's all the single lane bridges. It's all the things that you go
Along the
through on
way.
your way along the way. Absolutely. And that's where you grow, and that's where you take those moments. Yeah. So I don't like to look at life as a race. I like to look at it as a journey, because then you're actually experiencing and savoring every moment until you get there.
Well, and it's a personal journey and a unique journey. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we can compare our journey to someone else, but it's like apples and oranges. There's nothing to compare.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
I think that's why like what you do is really profound. And like remember we were talking earlier that
Mhm.
some people can feel like, oh, you do astrology, you do tarot reading, and they're kind of standoffish, like because maybe we didn't grow up, you know, being exposed to tarot
Yeah.
reading or astrology. And what have you found that you've had to do to introduce it to people who
Yeah.
are fearful
Yeah.
of the idea of
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm so
Yeah.
approachable,
Absolutely.
guys.
Yeah. I'm really nice. Yeah. Well, I think most people know that because of kind of my humor disarms a lot of fears a lot of the times. But as we were talking about before, when I first started this journey into doing it professionally, because I have another business where I was a party entertainer, so I was
Yeah.
doing a lot of events, and I was doing corporate events, and I was doing like birthday parties and bar and bat mitzvahs and all kinds of fun stuff. And so I would be reading for a lot of people who didn't necessarily hire me to do their personal reading. Now when I do readings, most people hire me, so they know, you know, they've either watched my videos, they kind of know they have a working knowledge of what tarot and astrology is, so they want it. These are people who would just sit down in the chair and they're like, hi, like, are you gonna tell me something horrible? I was really
Like
nervous.
doom and gloom, doom and
Here's a
gloom.
crystal. Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're just like, oh my God, please don't tell me anything. Like, don't tell me anything. Like, don't talk about this one topic. Like, I don't want to talk about my relationship. So I would have people, you know, like have like this is the structure. This is what I want to know, and this is all. And kind of tarot doesn't work like that. It's going to tell you what you need to know, what's most important to get you to the other side. And so I think a lot of times people, because of movies and because of like, you know, television and all of kind of the commercialization of divination, all very different things that all of us do, and we all have very different approaches. I think I have a unique approach because I can really reach out to people who are a little afraid, or people who even have a religious background. I have a lot of clients that are Christian or that are Buddhist or that are Hindu or that are Muslim. Like I have a lot of clients who are involved in a major religion, but they still like to work with energy. And I always tell people when I do readings for them, whether that's tarot readings or we go through their astrological birth chart, or Kissology readings, which you have had before,
Yeah,
whatever that is, it's
Wait, can you tell them what is
get a
Keilani?
Kissology. Yes, I will. So a Kissology reading is a type of divination. So let me kind of sort of start with like, what is divination? So
Okay.
divination is actually it can be using anything. It can use your intuition, you can use cards, you can use palm reading, Kissology, which is a lip print reading, all of these things to kind of support. It either can do a couple of things. It can tell you about your future. It can tell you about like any questions that you have about what's going on in your life. It can tell you about your psychology. It can answer questions about some things that you have hidden that you want to know. So it's just really shedding light on what's going on. So we use lots of different tools for that, and people use many different things. I, for one, use one tool called cartomancy, and that's actually using cards. So I use tarot cards.
Oh,
I
okay.
use oracle cards for people who maybe for tarot, some of the imagery might be a little scary because, you know, we have the death card, which people kind of don't really like a lot because
Yeah.
of how it's interpretive. It doesn't mean that someone's going to die in your life, but it does mean that's the ending of something, you know. And, you know, that is life. Life is all about beginnings and endings, right? Beautiful butterflies had to end their life as a caterpillar.
Yes.
They no longer can be that in order for them to transform into the beauty and be like a winged being that can float places.
Wow.
You can't do that as a caterpillar. Caterpillars just kind of stay on the tree and eat. You know, that's a different energy. So death comes at the precipice of transformation. So when you pull the death card, it doesn't mean people are going to die and all of that. It just means the death of something. It can mean the death of a toxic relationship. It can mean the death of a habit that is, you know, really keeping you under the gun, especially if you're suffering with some sort of like substance abuse issues. It can mean the death of a relationship that's no longer working for you, that's
Wow.
abusive or anything, you know. So again, you know, it's all in the interpretation. So that would be cards. Kissology, which is what you got, is a reading. It's so funny, of your lip print. So basically what everybody does is apply some really pretty lipstick, whatever one you want, and kiss on a kiss card, and I read the imprint of the lips. So the Kissology is interesting and fun because I think it's a little bit lighter than what we still get in depth. It's amazing how detailed you can get with your lips, and your lip prints actually change. So people have
Oh,
Kissology
really?
readings. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're like our
I
handprints.
should do
Our
it
handprints change too.
a year
Yeah.
from now because I just did it.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. You should.
Okay.
And so it tells you a little bit about your energies, what you're working with, your natural tendencies, some things to look out for, some things that might be on the horizon. And what I find that's most powerful for Kissology, which are for people who might be nervous about other readings, is that it really tells you like the secrets within your heart. Like, what are some of the
Wow.
things that I often find that in Kissology readings that people who are kind of like shadow creatives, people who hide, who I really wanted to always sing or write music or be a writer or what, you know, that comes out on your lips. You know, it's just like, so what, like I'll always say to somebody, so are you an artist? What kind of art? And they're like, no. What do you, I mean, like, well, I did paint like a year ago, but and that's like, yeah, I've been wanting to really do that, you know. So it's always interesting how it's uncovering like your desires, because a lot of times we're so busy with the day to day, you know, with
I agree.
like, I have to pay rent, I got to take care of my kids, like my husband, my wife, you know, all of the things that are just keep us under the gun, that our desires and our dreams and our goals and our aspirations just get hidden, and we just don't have time for them. So I think that when you get readings, it's uncovering the things that you felt like you didn't have time for, and now it was in your head before and you kind of buried it in your heart, but now a card says that. Like, that's the magic. The magic is like what was hidden, now a card says. And now you have to hold the reader at least accountable in the reading, and so then you can't really back away from that. You have to deal with the things that were buried, you know.
I
And I
remember
think that,
you did that with us. The group
yeah.
we're in Wahine,
Mm-hmm.
and it was interesting because I was one of those people who were hidden. Like, you're like, hey, so I see you know, you do this and that. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, and it kind of like gave me permission to do it more, because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's almost like we're so caught up in the doing daily day to day, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
cook, eat, clean, whatever's work,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have to literally commit to ourselves, to self-care, and to doing things that makes us happy, and
Absolutely.
it's good, but
Mm-hmm.
to make time for it, like mentally and even physically putting it into our schedule. And the Kissology was good because I've been holding back on my artistic side, and you're like, you know, you like to sing, dance, and I was like, I do, but like I'm so busy trying to be professional and how I'm conveying what I do with podcasting, speaking, or not that I hold back, but then like just being your authentic self and growing with it. Like that was the best part I learned from the Kissology, and other people learned a lot too.
Yeah, other people were like, how did you know that? And then other people were like, I'm sinking quietly into the
Please don't
and
tell.
that's interesting. Yeah, exactly. And that's interesting too, I think, like with the burden of knowledge has been an interesting thing as a person who's a reader and intuitive. Like, you just do tend to know certain things and you can see certain things, and knowing when to, you know, share with people what you see, and then knowing when to allow people to work through that, and then if they ask for help too. And so that's always like an interesting thing when you're in this field, from my perspective of, you know, trying to not be like the know-it-all and allowing people their journey. Like, you know, sometimes, a lot of times when we care for people, we want to save them. We're like, it's like watching a horror movie, and, you know, you're like, don't open the door, he's behind the door, like, don't, you know, and you're just like, no, you know. And sometimes, not to say life is always like that, but sometimes we want to, when we care about people, we want to scream to, like, don't go there, don't do that. And sometimes we don't understand that they have to make their choices, and it's through the choice and it's through the consequence that they learn that greatest lesson. And allowing that, especially when you're an intuitive person, and you don't have to be a reader. Many of us, I believe all of us are intuitive. So it's like everybody that is like intuitive and empathic and can feel, you know, but we love people, like our children, our family members, our spouses, and we just want to like save, and just kind of allowing people and trusting people, and just being there for them, knowing that whatever happens, you know, I will be there to support. But, you know, we can't really control people. Ultimately, we make all of our own decisions, and ultimately, no matter what kind of reading you have, or no matter what kind of astrological chart you have, and people are like, these signs are better than that. I don't believe that. I don't really kind of share my view of astrology with people like that. I think all the signs are beautiful, because all the signs are all about the evolution of the human. And so at every stage of humanity, at every stage in the astrology and the signs specifically, we're celebrating different aspects of humanity, starting with Aries, with the baby, the just being born, just recognizing who you are in this space, moving all the way to Leo season, which is like, I play and I'm creative and I do that in this space, all the way to just, you know, Libra, which is like, I like to partner up with people and share ideas, and I want to know what it's like to be with another person in this space, all the way to Aquarius, which is like, I'm thinking about the community and the whole. And then Pisces, which is you, which is like, okay, so I'm here, I'm the person that has the highest evolution. So part of me is here, but also there's a part of me that is like galactic, that's like larger. And I'm translating all these life experiences to the grand overall human experience, which is my soulful self. So I think there's no such thing. So people, I mean, you know, there's a lot of signs that get a lot of ratted, like Scorpios get a lot of hell. Like,
all like associated to like negative connotations.
Yeah, Virgos get a lot, you know, but there's beautiful things in all of that. You know, a Scorpio's ability to hold space and go to the dark place. The Scorpio's ability to, I mean, really is literally the phoenix. You know, people who have a lot of it, Pluto, especially in their chart, have come through trauma, massive trauma, and have transformed their trauma and actually made it an asset, and have gone out to help other people with that. And going deep in truth and honesty is something in that sign that's beautiful. And Virgos, which everybody thinks are really anal and really specific and have to have everything perfect. You know, there's a beauty quality to like the creative person, like putting stuff out and then taking it to their editor. Like you know, if you're a writer, you've written this beautiful, like gorgeous novel, and your editor is the person that takes all of the beauty and everything and says, okay, we need to make this concise. And I'm perfecting this. I'm making this into something that's really going to be beautiful and finished and polished. And I'm holding you to your highest self in a physical sense and also in like a spiritual sense. So I think all of the signs have something beautiful. So never feel like, oh my gosh, I'm this sign. And people always tease me. I mean, you're more than just your sun sign too. There's your moon and your rising and other things. So yeah, I just find it to be very useful in like learning about yourself without being judgmental, because you're saying to yourself like, okay, these are the planets that were in play, and these were the aspects and angles that were in play when I was born, and this is how it kind of manifests throughout my lifetime. And so I'm working with these energies and these kind of like natural tendencies I have, but at any time I can change. At any time I can, allow myself to go along with it, or I can change it. But I think it just makes a person a lot more open-hearted. And I think for myself, I become way more tolerant when I know other people and what their energy is. I can really respect like a creative.
They tend to be a certain way. Yeah. Sorry, it's stalling.
I'm not like trying. Yeah. Are we back? Okay, I think I see you. Are we back?
Okay, there. Yeah, now.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, sorry guys, if you're listening to this, there's the internet is stalling us.
Okay, but we're back.
Yeah, we're here.
We're here. So I think it allows you to understand people on a deeper archetypal level, and instead of personalizing certain parts of their behavior, how they are, you can kind of understand it and appreciate it and then be supportive of it. So
Keilani,
I think it's
your
actually...
picture's frozen.
Oh, am I frozen? Oh no.
I don't know.
Can you
try turn the video off and then turn it back on?
Okay, let's see. Let's do that. Stop video. Okay, is that better?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Okay, all right, great. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
What happened?
You know what it is? Everybody, we're in a pandemic. Everybody's online.
Everybody's
so
on.
People are at home watching TV on their internet, and so everybody's.
Yeah. And this is like, yeah, exactly.
And right now is the prime time. People are on their lunch breaks.
Yeah.
They're at work, and the kids are home.
Right.
I know we spoke earlier. When people are coming to you, you explained to me it's not the intention of them relying on me to tell them how to live their lives. Remember, can you expand more what you were saying about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's not people. I don't want people to feel that tarot or astrology is like a bottle that you would give a baby, like something that is like that you need and that you're dependent on, and that is your life source, because it's not. It's supposed to support. It's a supportive system. But really, again, it's just showing you information that you already know, and you take that information and then decide what you're going to do with it. So it's always in your hands. I mean, again, I think I mentioned this to you before. I've never had a reading where I've actually read for someone and they've told me everything that I said was like, I've had readings where maybe I read something in the future that hadn't happened, but along the lines of the energy of it and everything, people already knew. People know what they're dealing with. I think a lot of it is really just uncovering and bringing to surface things that people really like to bury, or they don't want to face, or they don't feel ready to face. But like everybody comes saying like, okay, I know I'm dealing with this. Let's see what the cards say about it. But they already know, and they've usually already made a decision. They've made a decision, like an internal decision, but they haven't acted on it. And I think in seeing the imagery in the cards, then they're saying, oh, okay, so this is just reiterating what I already know. And now I can choose to activate on it or not. That's always your choice.
A lot of it is possibly people are afraid.
Myself in general as
people, do you think that they, like you said, they already know inside what they need to do, but it's just the fear of what if I stop doing this, or I end this relationship, or I end this career, or end, like how you're saying people associate when they do the tarot readings, like the death, like it's someone who dies. No, it's yourself having to move on to the next chapter.
Yeah. And I think everyone, whether you get a tarot reading or not, endings or knowing when to leave something is very, very hard for people, because we're human beings, we're communal beings, we love other people, and we love to be in relationship. And I think when relationships end, whether that be love relationships, family relationships, business relationships, or just you're taking your relationship to the next level. It can even mean deepening your relationships. Like many people, when the relationship, especially when we're talking about like love relationships, sometimes when you're falling in love and you're taking that, people get very afraid because it means the death of the surface part. It means like, wow, I got to show up and I've got to commit and I'm about to have a family, and that can be frightening. So whether you're leaving something or you're going deeper into something, that is scary, because people don't always love a lot of change. We're creatures of habit. We love to know how things are going to be. We love to be able to predict how things are going to be. And then when things are changing all of the time, that wreaks a lot of havoc in our minds. And we can just see that, based on the world right now with the pandemic. I think there's so many layers to the pandemic as to why it's so stressful for us emotionally and physically at this time. But I think one of the biggest things is, and I would always, whenever I do readings about the pandemic, I'm always picking the moon card. And the moon card is the card of the shadow, is you don't really know what's going on. You're in moonlight, you're in obscurity. And it's through being content and comfortable, maybe not content, but being able to still navigate in obscurity is the key to survival right now, because we don't know. One day it's this, the next day it's this. The numbers were like this, then they go up. We're able to open, then we're closed again, and we have, it exists, it doesn't, there's so many things that are going with this, and we're all looking for like one solid narrative, and we are not getting that.
Yeah, we're
and
not
we
getting
might
it.
not be getting that for a long time. And so the question then becomes, well, what is the truth, and who has the truth? And there's so many truths and things like that are circulating, right? And conspiracy theories and all of that. And I can just say, and I spoke about this in my live, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that sometimes we might not know what the truth is. And we're not the only ones in any given time where we don't have the truth, we don't have access. We're used to it. And I know like social media makes us feel like we have the truth, but even when you don't know what the truth is, you can still live in a righteous place, right? You can still make sure that you're making good decisions, that you're still loving people, that you still have healthy boundaries, that you still are communicating, that you're still being the type of human being that you want to be, and
Yes.
and that you're not sacrificing your personal morals for that, until things get to a place where we know what's really going on. Like there is the truth, and then there's our internal truths, And
Yes.
so when we don't have the truth in the world, and this isn't the only time, because sometimes we think everything's good and we might be living the biggest lie because we don't know, like politics, you know what I mean? Like we
Right.
never know. There's a lot of things that we don't know.
The
But
back
we can
end.
just exactly, but all we have is like what we're doing and how we're showing up and what we're saying and how we choose to live our life and how we choose to treat each other individually, And I think that if we can be pono about that, then when things are revealed, then we can kind of sort of figure out what to do. And I think just using our intuition is the most important thing. And I have a YouTube video about that, about intuition and when to know when you're coming from a place of paranoia and when you're coming from a place of intuition, because they can feel similar, and conspiracy theory and stuff, all those things can feel very much like I think I know what's going on. But if you're having panic, and if you're afraid, and if you're and if you don't trust anybody, and if you're having all of that, that could be fear. That might not necessarily be intuition. Intuition tends to be a little quieter, a little softer, a little more assured. It might ask questions, it might want to do some research, So time, if the thing is if we haven't been doing this work all along, if we've been kind of sort of just like rolling through our lives like most of us do, because that's kind of sort of the way of the
Autopilot.
world
Yes.
now. Yeah, autopilot, exactly. Now it's like, okay, we actually have to listen,
We gotta
and we're
dig.
alone, right? And we're alone. So that's just huge. The Hermit card, there's a tarot card called the Hermit card. And the hermit card is all about the wizard. He looks like a wizard, and he's like holding up this lantern, and he's in a cave. And it's actually the card that's associated with Virgo. And it's all about like being alone in a space and figuring out who you are and being the best person you are. But he's like alone in a cave, and he has to use the light, the lantern that he has, which is representative of the light within himself, to figure out who he is and what he wants. But the only way for the hermit to do that is to be alone and to go on the journey alone, actually, to go into the cave alone and to figure that out. And so collectively, we are all having our little hermit moments,
Wow.
right
No,
now.
I was gonna say that's true, because depending like where you're at, some people are on lockdown, or they're restricted to go out of their homes, or if they go out of their homes, they have to like certain things, and that's kind of like the situation that we're in. And remember, we were talking about in some instances, it's important for us to have boundaries and to disconnect from social media, TV, all that stuff, to ground ourselves in the midst of it all, because it can just, we can spiral.
Oh, absolutely. I think when social media a lot of the times is a thing that it reminds me of like back in the day. I don't know if doctors still do this, but remember in the TV shows, the doctors would have that little thing and they would hit your knee would go like that. Like that was like the quintessential, like I'm going to the doctor, and the doctor has a stethoscope and he hits your knee and your knee goes up like that. I don't even think that
The
happens
reflex,
anymore, but the reflex of your knee. So I feel like that social media, it's constantly hitting, and we're just reacting. We're in a constant state of reacting. We're not necessarily creating. And I think that, like, for me at least, and I work with a lot of people, and this is why I think creativity and art is so important, because it helps us process emotion. I mean, that's why we do it. We don't really know of any other mammal species that creates beautiful things for the sake of wanting beauty or to create. It's more so like the bird of paradise does this whole dance and creates this nest so that he can mate. That's a true like desire. It's something that he biologically needs to continue to perpetuate that. But we as humans, we create things so that we can actually live and deal with all of the things that are going on in our world. And so having boundaries, especially with social media right now, is really important. And so for some people, that looks like letting go of friends. It looks like letting go of family members in various different ways. Like, some you can snooze, you can unfriend, you can block, you can do whatever, but that's happening. And I think that that's like a really good thing, especially for people who haven't been able to really hold boundaries before. I mean, it feels for those of us who are like, I'm a boundary person, that feels pretty natural. But there's those of us who've actually taken a lot, who were really not good about boundaries, but now because the cup is like overflowing, you're like, I can't take this. I need to turn off the television. I need to snooze this person for a while. Yeah. And I think self-care, we've been like, those of us who work in this, we're always talking about self-care, right? And it's like self-care. But if there was ever a time in your life that you thought that self-care was silly or whatever, like this is like, when else, hopefully we'll never have another global pandemic, right? I hope not. But this is the time. If you did not make time for self-care, this is it. This is the time to figure out what it is that I like to call like, what is your battery? How can you recharge? And again, I always encourage people, nature, if they can get out. And some people can't. So it could mean a house plant. It could mean a bath. It could mean like a nice long shower. It could mean a foot bath. It could mean doing your nails, doing your hair, deep conditioning, watching movies with your friends, playing board games, like unplugging. For my birthday was last Monday, and we thought we had the hurricane coming, and so like we had missed it, but like my birthday plans for Monday were shot, because I thought it was going to be like a lot of rain and stuff like that.
Yeah, disaster.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm really glad the hurricane didn't happen, but like, my birthday is like, I didn't, everything was closed because everybody thought it was going to be closed because, so nothing was open.
They planned to shut down.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They planned to shut down. So, I had bought a bunch of board games for this time period,
Oh, nice.
and I had already decided that like, okay, I'm just going to have this hurricane birthday.
Right.
I had to reframe it for myself. And so we ended up playing a bunch of board games, and I have a son, and it's just had been so long that we had played a board game. It's just amazing. And I forgot, and even he was just like, I forgot how fun this was, and how fun and how much we laughed, and how, you just kind of forget that like those kind of like how fun going to the beach,
Simple, yes.
I mean, we go to the beach all the time because we live in Hawaii, but like for other people who don't, like if going to the beach is something you do twice a year, then do that, taking a walk in the park, taking a walk with your kids, taking a longer walk with your dog, going a different path than you usually go, playing board games, doing an art project, putting together puzzles, like whatever, like tactile things. I think self-care is really related a lot to the inner child, and the inner child and the archetype of the child is kind of a symbol of Leo season. So this is a great time to do self-care, because Leos like to be like luxurious and and all of that. Like that's the thing, right? With
Yeah.
Leos, we love luxury and all of that. And I think like that kind of has this very superficial, like that would be that negative stereotype of they love luxury and they spend a bunch of money. But it doesn't really have to be like that. When we talk about luxury, we're really talking about things that make you feel good, materials that make you feel good, a dress that it looks a certain way on you and you feel good. And it doesn't have to cost whatever, it can cost, you could have got that from the thrift store or a hand-me-down, or you could have paid a lot of money. It's all about what makes you feel good. And so when we get into commercialism says you have to travel here to have this experience to feel good. You have to have this dress by this designer with this price tag to feel good. Not about that. It's all about what makes you feel good. And you only know that by going and experiencing and doing different things. And I think when you follow your senses, like what smells good, what tastes good, what feels good, that's kind of sort of puts you in that path.
I think it's good, like what you're explaining, because like the podcast Healing with Aloha, it's addressing life, as we navigate life, we address like grief and loss support, mental health and self-care. And like you said, it doesn't have to, like self-care doesn't have to come with a price tag. It can just be leaning into something that fills you up with love and joy and peace. Like we were talking earlier, the ability to have joy, peace, and love in the midst of like a pandemic, or going through a loss of a job, or changes in our family dynamics and whatnot. It's very valuable, because it's easy to be happy when you have money in the bank, when your job is going great, whatever. But your mental strength, emotional like intelligence to have joy and peace and happiness, it's very special. And that's an art that we can learn during this pandemic, because like you said, we don't know how much longer. The kids are supposed to have gone back to school, the time got pushed back. What if it gets pushed back again?
It might.
So do we just stay unhappy? No, we every day we just go at each day and we strive to do activities, whether it's nature or in the home, depending on our life situations, to find that harmony for us according to what we need. Because what makes you have harmony, listening to music or doing yoga, is great, but maybe someone else, like your son, has to do martial arts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like also understanding that we can still find ourselves to the other side, and we can still find happiness even if it looks different than the way that it used to look. And that just has to do with becoming more flexible, like we're here. And I think that's where gratitude is so important, because you're looking at, okay, what do I have? What am I working with right now? Things might not be the most ideal. This pandemic is so interesting in the way that there are so many people whose lives are actually very similar. I have clients who, they're still working, whether, maybe they always had an online thing or had their business. They don't see a big change to their finances. And maybe they haven't experienced any kind of loss from the pandemic, like in terms of sickness or death. I also know people who have lost siblings, who have lost parents and grandparents, who have lost their job. They don't know how they're going to pay their rent. They don't know how they're going to do stuff. And it's interesting to me that not everybody is struggling exactly the same way, but everyone is experiencing a grave change in the fighting against what is called the new normal, and I just can't wait for things to get back the way that they were. Why can't things be the way that they are? And I was just
It won't ever.
yeah. And I was in a social, this kind of like group that has a lot of memes, and because I told you before, I like a lot of like funny memes
humor.
and dark humor. Like I love myself some dark humor.
Wait, tell them what you're saying. You feel that humor is a higher energy.
Oh yeah. They're talking about energetic spaces and humor, and I was saying that I think humor and laughter, I think laughter is one of the highest vibrational things, and they say that it could potentially be a higher vibration even than love.
Wow.
In a way. And so so that's fantastic. But like I think that finding a way to understand that things may not go back, and that new normal doesn't mean new jail. It doesn't mean like it has to be as constricted as people think it is. It actually means that it's just a different way of doing things. And what we're trying to do is take the things that brought us comfort and joy before and figure out how they're going to fit into this new space. And for a lot of people who are just like, nope, I don't want this. I'm not having this. I'm not going to deal with the protest. I'm not going to deal with the virus. I'm not going to I just want to go back, like take me back. That's going to be really hard. And there's a lot of people that feel that way. They just want to not deal. And then there's a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm dealing with this, but I'm still waiting. I'm going, and I think that we have to be gentle with ourselves and try to figure out in the moments of uncertainty, which is what we have, which is what we're going to have. I mean, and just astrologically speaking, to give you guys all the heads up, I had talked about what July and August was going to be like, which was going to be, kind of sort of what's going on now. Now, in September, October, and November is actually the time where we see a lot of squares with Saturn and Pluto. And those are energies that don't necessarily feel as good. We have a Mercury retrograde, and Mars is going retrograde in November, which is right around the times of the election. So, heads up for the fact that like September, October, November are going to be rough. They're not, astrologically speaking, looking like they're going to be like the most comforting time of our year, in a year that's been a lot of ups and downs. Actually, this month is going to be definitely a lot lighter than what starts to happen beginning of September. So for me, with this information, and again with the burden of knowledge of like what's to come, I say to myself, okay, so if I know that there can be some hiccups and there's going to be some bumps and things might be a little challenging, then how can I prepare? What am I going to set forth for myself? Is this the time for me to put more time into my work? And I should be saving and not maybe, because in some of the pain and some of the struggle, like people are buying, like money is one of those things. People are on unemployment, they got stimulus, they're feeling really bad. So they're like, spend, because it makes you feel better. And it's like, and I've been telling everyone, save, because, we're still in the bumpy ride. It's like, you're on a roller coaster. That the roller coaster is going to end. You don't go on a roller coaster saying, this is a roller coaster for the rest of my life. That the highs and the lows of the roller coaster is going to be over. When you first are on it, it's like that, and to me, that's the worst part, because you're like, oh my gosh, it's the first hill, and I'm freaking out. Right. Like, if I can get over the first hump, and then and then you're like upside down, and you can tell in this analogy, I'm not a fan of roller coasters, but I mean they're fun, but my heart is, But that
that's life. That's life right there.
Exactly, and that what's gonna. So you kind of have psychologically prepared yourself for the things that you saw when you were, because they have you sitting there waiting in line, and you can see people's horror faces like as they're going through, and I think that makes it even more scary, because you're like, she looks so scared, that's gonna be me.
She's screaming, that's gonna be me.
Screaming, that's gonna be me. And I think that when we're looking at the ride, which is what's happening now, or with astrologers, that's what we see. We can say to ourselves, okay, so I know that this is going to be the loop, and this is what's going to happen, and you just kind of just get yourself in a place where you understand what you're working with, and then you're not fighting it. And so my fear for some folks is that they keep thinking that we're gonna go back, and so what it's looking like is it's not going to be that way. We're probably going to be in this energy, or we will be in this energy at least until December, and then we're going to have a change come next year. So, and I think they kind of sort of, they tell us that, well, this could last, it could, but I think I just wish in some ways that when we know that things are challenging, to just be really open, like a doctor would say, okay, this is the disease that you're working with and this is what it looks like. I think if your doctor was like, well, I think you have something, I'm not really sure. Well, we biopsied, but I'm not sure. You'd be like, oh my gosh, do I have it or not? Like, what is the plan of action? And if you feel that politically and all these things that like, okay, there's no plan, that's when you have to figure that out for yourself. So you know what energy you're working with. You know, this is bumpy ride for this year. This is a bumpy year. This is a transformative year. I have seen people's whole businesses, one of mine included, gone. I have also seen people open and put forth energy into the business that they've always wanted. You know what I mean? And I have seen people leave. Like, I have had friends who are just in bad relationships, and I have just been like, please.
See the light, see the light.
Get out of this relationship. Yeah, it's just see the light. You're bringing my ring light. See the light. And they're just like, Venus went retrograde, and they were like, I'm out. And I'm like, and their life has changed.
And the happiness, their energy.
And their energy changed, their energy lifted, and now they're thinking about what they want to do. So, I mean, I have seen clients and friends like take this coronavirus pandemic period by the horns and just whip up some stuff. Because people are like, well, I have no job, so I might as well write that book I've always, I mean, you don't have, like, what else? What, before it was like, well, I can't because of my job. And well, you don't have it. So you might as well.
May as well write that book, because
exactly.
You'll never have this downtime.
Exactly. People saying that they've spent time with their kids. I homeschooled my son for a very long time, and I know moms that were like, I wish I could do that, but my job, and I don't know what I'm doing. Now you have to. You remember
because they're working from home.
Careful, you guys wished for a lot of stuff in 2019. You wish for happiness, you wish for your own business, you wish to spend more time with your kids, and guess what?
Now is the time to execute.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there, of course, is things, trauma and sadness from the loss of people. That is also a reality. People that we thought were going to be in our lives
longer,
that are gone now, from sickness that we didn't foresee that this was going to happen that way. And I think, even in accepting and understanding those losses, and processing that, especially when it's a lot of loss in a short period of time, it brings a lot of fear up for you too. So, people are juggling everything, and you don't have to juggle it all at once. If there's times, even for me, for my other business, actually this weekend, interestingly enough, I was really thinking about, because I was uploading some stuff, and I was looking through some old photos and all the face painting that I did. I was just kind of going through them, and I hadn't really, since the beginning of the pandemic, looked at any of my work, because that job, I can't do parties, because of the social distancing. So I'm looking through my photos, and I'm looking at all these pictures of all these kids with butterflies on their faces and Iron Man and all this stuff, because I did all of that. And I just was like, boy, like, I love that work. I loved painting on people. I loved being the life of the party, and that's not something that's happening. It's not like it won't ever happen again. I'm sure in a year or so, it will come back. But right now, I've just had to shelve something that I worked really hard for, something that I believed in, something that saved my life. And I enjoyed something that saved my life in a lot of ways, that provided for me and my son. And so I had a mourning period, and I was just like, well, damn, like, I thought I had already mourned that, like I was dealing with that in March, and now here we are at the beginning of August, and it came up again, and it's just, you allow that to say, okay, well, that doesn't feel good, and I understand why I feel that way. And you just kind of sort of sit with that, you breathe it in, you breathe it out. And then I was able to kind of go to the next thing that I was doing. But that's what happens, right? Like trauma and pain and loss is a cyclical, it spirals up, right? And I love the idea and the visual of it spiraling up, because you're at every time you're getting higher in it, but it does come back around. When we lose people that we're close to, and we're dealing with grief, and that's such a difficult emotion to deal with, because it really is just like someone completely snuffed out the light, right? Grief is so heavy. It's a physical, it almost feels like it's more than just your emotions. It's like through your whole body. And it's just one of those things too, that time is the thing that heals. And also finding those moments, those little moments in between where you can smile and laugh. A couple years ago, I lost my father, and I had never really like it was such a he was sick for a really long time, so we knew psychologically it was going to happen. He had dementia for a long time and was able to stay in the home for a while before he was put in a facility. And then at the time I happened to be back on the mainland, and I knew inside that I was moved back to the mainland for that period of time so that I could be there through his passing, because this is going to be something that was really hard on my family, because he was like the glue that grew, that stuck everybody together. And so when that person's gone, it's just like really difficult. And I remember visiting him when I was in the mainland, and I could see that, he was in really bad shape. And to see somebody who's like this tall, strong man, and he's like, not able to even eat through his mouth, he's eating through, the bag. And it's just,
Wow.
seeing who, and, it had been a long time since he didn't even been able to recognize me or recognize, my son. He always recognized my mom though, which was really sweet.
Oh.
But I felt like he knew. It was the first time I experienced, because I had a very, very close relationship with my dad. So, but it was a tumultuous relationship, but it was still close. And I felt like his spirit recognized mine. And when I was in there, I asked my mom and my son to leave because I wanted to talk to my dad. And so I talked to him and I just said, it's okay for you to leave. And I just told, because I felt like he needed to hear that, because he was just holding on. And I was like, you're like I don't know what happens. I don't have all the details of after, but I do know that you held on as long as you could, and it's okay. It's okay. And I don't even know if he heard me, but I know his soul heard me. And really, it was just about a month and a half after that he passed. And then what was so interesting and transformative, especially if you have someone that you're close to that you lose, but you have kind of you love them, but you had a very tumultuous relationship with, it's like his spirit, because I do believe in that, like really became so powerful after he transitioned, and he loved animals. So like during his funeral, we saw like all these deer came forward, and there's these like, falcons, like birds are just kind of a thing in our family that would be like our kind of spirit animal, and they always come. And so birds have been this thing for my father. Like whenever I've been in situations where I have just been like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, like I'll see feathers, like where I don't know how, like all the doors were closed, how did feathers come in?
Here.
Birds will land close to me, birds will walk up to me. I've had birds surround me like in a circle before. So he became so powerful after he transitioned, the spirit. But dealing with the grief of that, even when I knew that this was going to happen, it was something I didn't understand. I didn't understand that losing a parent is like, you feel it in your DNA. Like when you're siblings, when you're blood, you feel it in a way that I couldn't have never expressed, because I hadn't had a loss, so close to me. And so it just took so much time, but at the, in retrospect and looking back at it, you allowed yourself. Do we have a little visitor here?
Yes, I do.
Hi, visitor.
Sorry, guys. I have a visitor, my cousin.
No worries. We have a cutie patootie. Hi. So we have that. We make that transition, and we understand, like, where we're going. and we come to the other side of that.
Okay, we'll go play outside after, okay? For tunneling. Thank you. Bye.
But yeah, so we come to, that part where we give it time, and we just understand that it will, it surfaces. There's times where I'll hear songs. My dad loved all kinds of different music, and I was raised on oldies, so like I know like all the 50s and everything, and I'll hear songs, and they're just like, this song is like what my dad used to sing or whatever, and I just will still feel like so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's gone, or I wish I would have, I wish we would have been able to have a talk before he got sick, because that was another thing when you're dealing with a parent that has dementia. They were gone before their body was gone, right? Because the mind was gone. So you're dealing with two losses. So when they first get sick and they're immobile, or they're not, or, you can have loved ones in comas or on that are intubated, because that's what's happening with COVID. So it feels like I'm mourning, but you're still here, but I have no connection to you. and so you're mourning that. And then when the body is gone, spirit, in that sense, it's like
a
another
different layer
mourning.
of,
Yeah. And then you're actually able to really mourn in its totality.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard when a person's still alive and will talk to you, but they don't recognize who you are. It's hard to mourn them. It's hard, and I feel like this was something that happened for years, and just seeing how difficult that was for my sister and for my mom and for my brother. And being the person in the family that was just like, I'm holding that space for them, and then because I was holding the space for everyone, how do I do that for myself? Like, how do I process this? So yeah, it's a lot, but we move through that, and I feel like my sense of spirituality and connection helped me through that. When my dad, when we found out that he passed, I kind of really was like, I was in New York at the time and my family was in Maryland, and I was like, I don't know if I can go to the funeral, because I don't like dead bodies. I have a thing with them, like, oh, I don't want, and I was like, I don't know if I can go. My mom was like, okay. And she was really disappointed. She was like, okay, like, if you can't come, I understand, because because it was acting, and I think I had a show that I was doing, and I was like, I'm not sure. And that night I actually had a dream, and my dad was in the dream. And it was so strange because I hadn't talked to my dad and had a conversation with him in like maybe 7 years, because at that point his mind was not there. So we were having a conversation, just, and talking, and he was sitting in this big wicker chair, and we were just talking, and he was talking to me like in a way that he talked to me when my son was little, and my son went to go visit him, and I was missing my son at the time because he went there for the summer so I could go to culinary school. It was the first time I was away from him for 3 months, and I missed him so much, and I would like call my dad crying all the time. Like, I missed. And so I bought this fish, and then like, I had put together this whole aquarium, and I bought this fish, and my fish died. This is many, many years ago. And so I was talking to my dad about how sad I was about this fish dying. And meanwhile, I'm an adult, like a full adult, and I'm just like crying to my dad about fish. And he was because my dad was always like a special person who like would, have that, like, hold that sensitivity he could at that point. And he was just like, well, it's okay, things pass away. And so there was just this way he talked to me. And in the dream, that's the same exact way. Like, when I was mourning the fish, this is how he was talking about. And he was like, well, I think it might be a really good idea if you go to Maryland. And I was like, I know, Dad, but I don't really want to go, because it's too much. It's too heavy. I just can't deal with it. And I can't deal with everybody. And everybody's kind of like, everybody's angry, everybody's hurt. And I can't be that person that's holding things together. And I don't want to be lashed out. And he was like, well, I think your mom really needs you though, and I think you can do this. And he was just talking to me like, so like matter of factly and so supportive and everything. And we had this conversation, I think like a 20-minute conversation. I don't remember everything, but I remember those points. And I woke up and I was like, oh, well, absolutely, I need to go. So I called my mom and I was like, well, I just dreamt of Dad, and he told me that I should come, so I'm coming tomorrow. And she was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And it's just like, so those synchronicities, dreaming about him at the time. There's one other little synchronicity, because I think this is important. One other little story. I love telling stories. So my bird, I had an African gray. Again, I was talking about birds. I had an African gray parrot at the time, and he was the Maui house with my ex. And when we moved to initially we didn't know we were going to move. We were just there for a period of time. We were in New York, and he flew away. She flew away. And I was so upset because I was so connected to that bird. And, they talk and everything, say, I love you and all that. And so we just couldn't find her. And we had, kind of given up because it had been several months since we had seen her. And so we went to the wake, or we went to view the body the day before. And I was just like, I can't, like, I was just feeling at an all-time low. Because like I said, it's hard to view bodies of your loved ones. And because of the type of church and religion my family is in, there's a lot of open casket, not every culture and the people do that, but that's just what they did. And I was just like, you guys, like, oh my gosh, like I just, it's hard to keep viewing and see this. So we went to view, and then the next, and so it was before the funeral, and I was just like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can show up. Why are we doing this? Why does it have to be so big? Why is everybody invited? Why can't I mourn by myself? I just really wanted to be alone. I didn't want to be public. I didn't want to be in the front pew. I just was like, I want to go like the hermit in the cave and not deal with anybody and deal with this on my own, while also trying to be strong for my son. So I was like, I don't think I can go through this. I don't even think like everything was a task to get up to the back. Like I just felt like something was pushing down on
Heavy.
me. So I get a call like at 10 o'clock that night from this guy. And he was like, hi, so this is gonna really weird, have your bird. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, like you put something on Facebook, right? Because like I was in the park, I was at Keilani Park, and this bird flew down, and you know, it's African gray, has a red tail, looks really friendly. And I don't know, but like I told my daughter to look, and we looked up on Facebook because I had put all this missing bird, and I think we have your bird. And I was like, well, can you send me pictures? And it was so strange because like 10 o'clock, right? You know, I was like, send me pictures. And so he
Because
sends me
you're six
pictures, and I was
hours
like,
ahead, right?
yes, yeah. So I was like, okay. And so he sends me pictures, and I'm looking, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like Honey Girl. I was like, okay, well, her name was Honey Girl. And I was like, okay, well, I'm like, I'm going to send my ex over to see you, you know, and okay, wait, give me, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, well, so where are you? And yeah, what's your telephone number and what's your name? And he said, my name is James, which is my dad's name.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Like, and my ex went over and it was her, and he brought her back, and James called me, and I just said to myself, like, okay, I can do this. And so I ran upstairs to my mom, and I was like, Mom, oh my God, you're never going to believe what happened. This guy found Honey Girl. And she was like, what? You know, she like wakes up and then she's like, what? And I was like, yes, and guess what? And I'm telling her a story, and I'm like crying. And I'm like, and his name is James. And then my mother starts crying.
Oh.
And then she calls like my brother, and then we call my sister, and it's a chain. It's a chain, and we're calling family, and we're calling, and everybody's crying, and everybody. And it was just one of those things that like helped, you know, held us together in that. And again, like that could have been just names, whatever, you
But
know.
that's what
But
gave
for
you guys
me,
that.
I chose to believe that that was like some deeper, you know, spirituality, some deeper thing. My dad just coming in again, like, you guys, you know, you can do this, you know. And so yeah, pay attention to the synchronicities, pay attention to those little things, especially when you're grieving, because I think our loved ones come through and they tell us all the time. And if we're open to that, then we can actually aid in our healing and speed in our healing and still feel connected. Even though it's going to feel like a different connection, you'll still feel connected, you know?
Yeah, I've learned it. I don't think I learned right away, but maybe like
Yeah.
when I hit the 10-year mark or beyond,
Mhm.
that the love that the people I miss who've gone before me to the next life, that the love that they have is still the same.
Mhm.
It just
Mhm.
seems like it's one-sided. Like the love is
Yeah.
still there. It's like I'm only talking and I can hear myself, you know, because like maybe I got to be more quiet
Yeah.
to like you said, look for the signs. And
Yeah.
then they would want us to be happy and not
Yeah.
be crying for them, and
Right.
that we carry on their legacy. And
Yeah.
so all the love that we would pour into them, we pour into our children, or we pour into being a kind human being and being more
Yeah.
empathetic, because the world needs more love.
Yeah.
And so we
Absolutely.
carry on their legacy in that way. And when
Yeah.
I finally had that mindset, it was like, it was profound, because you know, all those years you just miss them, you just want them back, you know.
Yeah.
And it's normal to feel that way. It's very normal.
Absolutely.
But the love that they made us feel, to take that love and to transform it into ourselves, the love
Mm.
they have, like love ourselves too, and then
Yeah.
spread it's powerful,
Yeah.
you
It
know. And
really.
so thank
And
you for
telling the
sharing that, man.
story, oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think in telling our loved ones stories and telling, you know, I really wanted to be hermit during the funeral because I didn't want to publicly deal with everything. And one thing that I learned, because they had my brother, my older brother, I have an older brother, who was my dad's son by a different mom, but he was raised with us, and basically my mom was like his mom, and he is a minister, and so he actually, you know, gave the whole like sermon and talked and everything, which I thought was just profound to do for his father, who he also had a bit of a tumultuous relationship with, but to see him show up like that was so beautiful. And they had several family members and friends, and one friend of mine from childhood, who I actually don't really talk to that much anymore, she stood up and talked about my dad and talked about like the effect that he had on her life and fun stories. And I had no idea that people talking about him would help me, you know, because I thought like if this is going to be painful, it too, like I can't understand how that would be. And I realized like people who are grieving from people that they love and they care about, telling their stories is a way of keeping them alive.
Yes,
And
I agree.
I have a friend who lost her mom a couple years ago, and I had like a bunch of pictures because we were always on the beach together, and you know, and I just had pictures of her, and I will like from time to time like just like here's a picture, remember, because I called her mom my mom because my mom was only maybe, so she was like mom to me, so I was like, here's a picture of mom, you know, and just of all of us on the beach, you know, and just different, like just talking about stories and also telling people, like I told her once that I'd had a conversation with her mother and how much her mother loved her and was proud of her. You know, a lot of times, like, we don't tell people that, you know, or sometimes, you know, it's, you know, guys
For
don't show
granted.
their emotions, you know. So when someone says to you, I just want to let you know that your father or your sister or your mother or the person you lost loves you or loved you so much, she always talked about you, he was always so proud of you. It's just like, you know,
Yeah, it's
that's so
comforting.
powerful. Mm-hmm.
I tell people, because sometimes people don't know how to deal with people who are grieving. Sometimes they avoid them because
Yeah,
they feel guilty, they feel bad, they don't want to hurt them or
they
whatnot,
don't.
and
Mm-hmm.
they don't realize like it's been 19 years since my sister died. When people randomly, like I don't even know them, walk up to me and just say, "Oh, are you Kiala's sister?" And I was like, "Yes." They're like, "Oh, there's this one time," and then they just share like a simple story, and then
Mm-hmm.
it warms my heart because I can tell by their sharing that they love her too.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to allow people in our life to share their memories of our loved
Yeah.
ones because it makes them live on,
Mm-hmm.
and to know that people care
Yeah.
the way we care for them,
Yeah.
it's important. And so it's good. Sorry, mom.
Oh no, that's okay. Me too. I'm like literally clinging to my soda lights. I'm like holding my crystal dear life, so I'm not like.
Every time
No worries, girl. I just got a big old crystal right here. This soda light.
she's all cheating the system, mom.
I'm totally cheating. I'm like, I'm not getting emotional. I'm not getting emotional. Not the soda light keeps you. It just keeps the talking and the and I think that's, but also like, I'm so glad that we're laughing because to me, that is grief. It is like, oh my gosh, I'm about to cry. And then at a split second, something super funny and hilarious. And you're also letting that through. And that was another thing I didn't realize because I was like, I had to give myself permission to laugh. Like I had to say, like some things were funny, you know,
A lot of this
there
is
was just,
funny.
yeah, there was. And we were just like, why, like, why did mom choose that tie for that tie? Dad would have hated that tie. And we're laughing about that. And it's like, you know, oh my God, just weird. Like, so allowing yourself to also just laugh at stuff that might seem like, oh, that's kind of dark humor and that doesn't have a place for it. You know, like you're feeling both, you know, and I think that's humanity in its totality, you know. Going through that and we're just staying open to all of those emotions and knowing that, like, I think laughter and grief, they actually live
Go
very
hand in
close to,
hand.
because
Yeah.
it's release, because laughter is release, right? It's release of emotion, and pent up emotion, it releases it. So a lot of times you'll find yourself at a deep emotional state, but then, you know, you open. So yeah.
That, you know, and
Yeah.
it's a great way to end this whole discussion. That yeah, you can mourn and you can still laugh
Yes. Yeah.
because it's all in here affecting your throat and your heart. And you when you laugh, it's like you're freeing it.
Yeah.
You know, you're acknowledging it, but you're freeing it. And then
Yeah.
it comes in waves and you just roll with it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like even with everything
Mm-hmm.
with the pandemic, we're all grieving in some shape, way, or form.
Yeah.
Maybe some
Absolutely.
people they still work the whole time, but other people that are in their family or friends family lost someone, you know, like during this time, or they lost their jobs. And so we're all trying to do the best that we can to support one another. And some people just revealed who was real in our lives and who weren't. And And so we're grieving relationships that, you know, wasn't gonna last in a time like this, but was already there. Is just this kind of like disrupted it all. And so there's a
A lot
lot
of people have lost relationships that they, or have kind of renegotiated what that relationship looks like, you know, based on just what they need in their life. I mean, it's also okay to if your cup is full and you're not able to hold the space for everyone, to let them know. You know, I've had a friend say, you know, I have a lot of stuff going on and I am just not going to be able to show up in your life the way that I want to. And we had a discussion about that. So I think that, like, that's important, you know, to understand that we're weaving in and out of it, and also just allowing for those relationships to transform. And, you know, and also knowing that there's like other relationships, you know, that the beautiful thing about it is energy takes up space. Energy takes up space, right? So when you have energy, if you have a negative relationship or a relationship that's causing you a lot of trauma and a lot of pain in your life, and you put so much energy into that, it's holding up a space in your energetic field. It's holding up a space for your like how much you're texting, how much you're talking, you know, hours, you know, the fights that you have, the makeups that you have, it's taking space. When you're able to release relationships like that, you'll find that other people will come in and you'll say, well, oh my gosh, I had, you know, like, how did that happen? Well, they were probably always there all along, but your focus, your eye was somewhere else. So it always seems that when there's a release, there's something else that comes in. And the thing that comes in is actually so much more aligned with who you are and staying. But again, you know, that creature of habit, our old friends, but this was my friend for this long. And this was my friend who got me through this. I mean, that's another thing. When you have friends that have been there through losses and through pain and through suffering, and they help, you know, they were there when my child was sick. They, you know, we have these loyalties to people, these really strong loyalties. And then sometimes we
that
can
are
get
detriment though.
Exactly. And so you're just like, no, but I can't leave this person because they were there when no one else was, which is such a gift for them to be there at that time when no one else was. That's such a gift. Now you're in a different place. And if the relationship hasn't evolved to the place that you're in right now, now the things that you're dealing with, they might not be able to deal with. And it doesn't mean that it has to be an ending of the friendship. It can just be that the friendship is kind of shifting into something else. And what you might need is this other situation or this other person that's coming into your life, or you might need more time alone. So there's, you know, the myth of this is my best friend. It's like through everything. I mean, that's great if people have that, but the reality of it, the way that kind of a lot of people are seeing friendships there's layers, there's tiers to friendships. You have, you know, your associates, you have people that you kind of talk to on the job, or your business associates or whatever. You have friends, your friends that are like family, you have family members, you have people that you partner your life with, that you want to live with and have a family with, or you just, you know, have romantic feelings towards. Like, there's so many different tiers, and people a lot of times are moving up and down those tiers. And I think when we understand that, and we understand the nature of what each relationship is in our lives, we're not putting everything on one, as opposed to, like, you know, we're spreading it out. So then as people move in and out, we're not so attached to this one person leaving, because we know that we have other people.
It's part of life. Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. And this time more than ever, like, we realize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I am grateful that we had this time, and I think we definitely, you know, have a lot we have in common, and we can share about. And then I wanted people to know, how can they find you on social media, because you do go live on Instagram.
I do. I go live on Instagram every Wednesday, and that is at 1:11 Hawaii Standard Time. I believe that's 4:11 on the West Coast and 7:11 on the East Coast. And for everybody outside of that, you can figure that out, because I don't know. But yeah, I go live on Instagram, and usually I'm talking about like the energy of the week, like what's going on astrologically. And then I'll just pinpoint into like some detail, something that's specific to what we're all going through. And I talk about that. If people have any questions, they can always like
And
email
then
me or
on
DM me.
YouTube, what is the
Yes.
channel name? Because if in
Oh,
case some people are on
yeah.
Facebook, some people are on
Yeah.
Instagram, some people are
Absolutely.
not.
So on Instagram, I'm the_wild_wahine. On YouTube, I'm the Wild Wahine. On Facebook, I'm the Wild Wahine, and I'm also on Twitter on the Wild Wahine. So the only one that has underscores is Instagram because I didn't snatch up the name quick enough. Three forums. I have a direct link on Facebook and on Instagram to my online scheduler if you want to schedule a reading, a tarot reading, a Keisology reading, or an astrology reading. And you can also find it at www.thewildwahine.as.me. And on YouTube, I have videos. I always, I'll go live, but I do save my lives and move them to
Okay.
IGTV, right? Yeah.
Yes,
I always want to say story.
IGTV.
So they're on my IGTV, and I also put them on YouTube as well. And I also have some videos that are just for YouTube where we talk a lot about, I have one up there that's really interesting about emotions. And I go through various different emotions. I started with anger as an emotion, and I'll talk more about like astrology and signs and things like that. So if you have any questions, you can always email me at Keilani, Keilani, at thewildwahine.com.
Thank you
And
so
and I wanted to
okay,
offer one
okay.
last thing for all of your listeners for the month of August. If they want to book a session, they will get a 20% discount for for all of. And so I think I'll probably call it Aloha Healing with Aloha. Healing with Aloha. I don't maybe need to shorten it, but I will give you the discount code and you can like
Okay.
look
And then
that
I'll
up.
put it on top of the podcast and then wherever
Yes.
the podcast is. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
guys, take advantage of that deal. I did the Kissology, and let me
Yeah.
tell you, your lips say a lot more than you think.
Yeah. I'll call it probably Healing Aloha. That's what I'll call it. Yeah.
Okay. No, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And let me just close it out and you could just stay on here.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you so much for joining us with Keilani today for Healing with Aloha podcast. Find us on anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Pinterest. And we look forward to the next time we go live and on the podcast. But sending all of our love and a hui hoi until the next time. Aloha.